afternoon, everyone. We will get started. My name is Jennifer McGuffin. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Romanucci and Blandin. We are very glad you are here today. I'll make some introductions and then we'll have several speakers. The most interesting, of course, being Herman Williams himself. We are here to discuss the filing of a civil complaint for what he has endured, all relating to a wrongful conviction and nearly 29 years incarcerated. Let me tell you who we have here today. First, I would like to call attention to one of our audience members from the Illinois Innocence Project, Attorney Lauren Casper, who was instrumental in getting Herman the freedom that he deserved. From Romanucci and Blandin, we have founding partner Antonio Romanucci. Also representing Herman is partner Bryce Hensley. And from the law firm of Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge, founding partner Stephen Hart, we have partner John Marrese. Also representing but not present, Brian Eldridge and Carter Grant. Rounding out the legal team from Romanucci and Blandin, we have senior paralegal Marina Fontana and also paralegal Caitlin Butler-Eberhardt. And from HME, paralegal Morgan Forbes and law clerk Brad Kupians. Pretty close, huh? We are going to start off with attorneys, starting with Antonio Romanucci.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And once again, we need to stand before you as a community in complete disbelief for how a member of our own community, Herman Williams, was treated by public servants who took oaths to protect and serve and defend the rights of innocent people. And let's make something clear now. Herman Williams is innocent. Herman Williams was always innocent, and that's a hard stop. His nightmare and 29 years of physical and psychological and mental and emotional trauma continues today and can only somewhat be made better with the vindication of a judgment in his favor by a jury of his peers who will proclaim his innocence. He is a victim in every sense of malicious and intentional lies, exaggerations, fabrications, and suppressions of evidence. Police are community servants paid by honest taxpayers to serve them and to solve crimes, to protect decent people. Well, all of that went terribly wrong in 1993 and 1994. And Herman and his family paid the price for that for nearly 30 years. Herman was presumed guilty from the get-go, and the police and prosecution ensured that he would be found guilty. The opposite of exactly what our justice system and its Constitution requires. His was an unconstitutional and unconscionable conviction. Today, we begin the fight to get him the justice he so badly deserves from a conviction of the absolute worst kind. Romanucci and Blandin and Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge are proud to announce the filing of the civil lawsuit on behalf of Herman Williams, detailing his wrongful conviction for the 1993 murder of his former wife in Lake County, Illinois. Herman's wrongful conviction was the result of fabricated confession, manufactured, manipulated, and concealed evidence, and false testimony by law enforcement. He finally proved his innocence in 2022 through forensic re-examination and new DNA testing, as well as demonstration of serial misconduct by law enforcement officials involved in his case. The pain that Herman has endured cannot be described, but he will speak to you himself in a few minutes, and he will do his best to describe what he went through. The questions that beg to be answered is not only how this could happen, but why. Although the truth will be borne out once we commence discovery, we have a good idea right now of how and why. The answers may seem simple, but rather they are rooted in corrupt patterns and practices, a culture of impunity and inhumanity. And said more simply, these are gutless and heartless human beings that did this to Herman. But why did they do it? Because the people abandoned professional ethics and human decency in blind ambition for personal gain, career advancement, and the appearance of success. They didn't care who they destroyed in the process of getting a conviction, because all they wanted was a conviction. The Lake County Major Crime Task Force had a problem in the 1990s, and the Lake County Prosecutor's Office was right there in lockstep with them. Though through years of corruption, innocent people who never should have been convicted are now left broken and seeking justice to piece together the rest of their lives. Our legal community is so fortunate to have great lawyers like Lauren Casebrick. She's the one who protects, and it's those centers that she works for, like the Innocence Project, who make it their mission to help and fight and get people like Herman Williams out of prison and back in the world where they always belong, proclaiming their innocence. This lawsuit aims to restore some of that freedom to Herman by seeking monetary damages, and he wants all of the guilty people to be held accountable. After his wrongful conviction in 1994, Herman Williams spent nearly 3 decades in prison based on evidence that was fabricated or coerced by Sergeant Lou Tessman of the Lake County Major Crime Task Force and the Waukegan Police Department. Tessman flat out lied. That's another hard stop. He took every shortcut possible to guarantee a conviction, and he succeeded. And we now know he did the same thing in other cases. That's been proven. In conjunction, Assistant State's Attorney Michael Mermel fabricated evidence and withheld material facts at trial knowingly, which would have evidenced Herman's innocence. However, Tessman and Mermel, even them, they did not act alone, and they were aided by the misconduct of others with the Lake County Major Crime Task Force and its constituent agencies. This serial misconduct was emblematic of patterns and practice that were commonplace in that task force, municipal police departments, and the Lake County State's Attorney's Office in the early 1990s. The taking of shortcuts to filter evidence, selectively confirming the guilt of their target over and over again. Herman's case is amongst the most egregious we've ever seen. He is 100% innocent, and there was no legitimate evidence remotely connecting him to this crime. The only reason he was convicted and spent nearly 30 years in prison is because of morally corrupt men like Tessman and Mermel literally made up evidence to advance their personal careers. Their level of depravity is unconscionable and unparalleled. And the fact that their respective employers at that time ratified, condoned, and enabled their conduct makes this not just a case of bad apples, but the whole barrel, a case of institutional indifference. So I'm grateful for the trust Herman Williams has placed in our legal team, and we are proud to represent you, Herman. And we are looking forward to the day in court where a jury of your peers will say, innocent. I now would like to introduce our esteemed co-counsel, Stephen Hart from Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Herman. The rest of our legal team. My name is Stephen Hart from Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge. And I too am incredibly proud and honored to have the pleasure of representing Herman Williams in this very significant federal lawsuit. The sanctity of human life is what we cherish in this country. It's what separates us from other countries. It's the sanctity of human life that allows civility to exist, people to live in harmony, free to pursue whatever they want to pursue in life. And it was the sanctity of human life that was so callously disregarded in the prosecution of Herman Williams. He was an innocent man then. 29 years later, he's an innocent man. And now we get down to business, serious business. The filing of a 55-page federal wrongful conviction lawsuit. We're confronting head-on the fabric of our criminal justice system, uncovering the truths behind false confessions, abuse of DNA evidence, the concealment of other physical exculpatory evidence, and the gross manipulation of the so-called expert opinion evidence. And this was all done by public officials. Law enforcement, lawyers, and experts working on behalf and representing the people of Lake County and the state of Illinois. They failed miserably and at such a high and devastating cost to Herman and the trust that we put in our institutions. Herman, on the other hand, is not walking into this federal lawsuit cavalierly. He's doing so with detailed and extensive research gathered over nearly 30 years while he was wrongfully confined in prison. He was innocent when he walked into prison, and he lost a tremendous amount of that innocence by the time he walked out a free man 29 years later. He saw things and lived through things that no innocent person should ever have to endure. Herman is a man of great integrity. We've gotten to know him extremely well over the past few months. He has a strong sense of pride. He knows right from wrong and always has. He stuck to his principles throughout his life, and the time in the U.S. Navy, I can tell you, he certainly cherishes to today. He is so proud to have been a naval officer. That was all taken from him, and so much more by callous acts of a few that were sworn to uphold these trusted institutions to do justice. Now here's the reality. Here's the real world scenario. Herman's freedom was taken away by the very same institutions he protected fiercely as a naval officer in war. That's the truth. Getting to know Herman in preparing his lawsuit has been a privilege. This is a man to look up to. This is a man of conviction, and we look forward to introducing him back into the legal system, to vindicate him, to tell his story, and to hold those that wrongfully took his freedom, to make them responsible for the loss of his contact with his family, and to restore his good name back to him that he so rightfully deserves. It's now my pleasure to introduce my partner, John Marrese, who will walk everyone through the nuts and bolts of Herman's complaint. Thank you.
My name is John Marrese, a partner at Hart, McLaughlin, and Eldridge, and as Stephen mentioned, I'm here briefly before introducing Herman to walk you through some of the details of the complaint. Herman's lawsuit was filed yesterday in federal court here in Chicago, the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, Eastern Division. He alleges in that complaint civil rights violations, violation of due process, unlawful detention, malicious prosecution, and intentional infliction of emotional distress under state and federal laws. You have heard about some of the actors in Herman's case. Here we name some of those that Herman is suing. He has sued Sergeant Lou Tessman of the Lake County Major Crime Task Force, Assistant State's Attorney, Lake County, Michael Mermel, Sergeant Charles Fagan of the same Lake County Major Crime Task Force, and medical examiner, Dr. Nancy Jones. He has also sued other police officers and their employers, the municipalities that employ them. There, in a nutshell, were 3 lines of false and problematic evidence, among other evidence, that led to Herman's conviction. First, it included a fabricated confession. Herman alleges that Sergeant Lou Tessman fabricated a confession from him, made it up from whole cloth. We have also alleged that Sergeant Tessman's supervisor and confidant, Charles Fagan, personally knew of or should have known that that confession was fabricated. Assistant State's Attorney Mike Romanucci, as alleged in the complaint, fabricated evidence of the time of Penny Williams' death. Some context for that is required. In order to convict Herman at trial, the state had to show that Penny Williams was murdered in a very small window of time, because otherwise Herman Williams's whereabouts were extensively accounted for and corroborated. The medical examiner in the case issued an opinion that put the time of death in a very wide zone, the vast majority of which Herman could not have committed the murder. It was impossible. And so in advance of trial, Assistant State's Attorney Mike Romanucci and medical examiner Nancy Jones concocted an alternate time of death opinion to fit the narrative that Herman murdered his wife. In conjunction, State's Attorney Romanucci buried evidence of the memorandum showing that the actual time of death opinion was much broader and would have vindicated Herman. The complaint also alleges that State's Attorney Michael Morrell fabricated other evidence in conjunction with police officers, including the location where Herman's former wife, Penny Williams' purse was found. A brief context for that is required as well. At trial, it was testified that Penny Williams' purse was found in a dumpster near Herman's then wife's apartment, the implication being that Herman put the purse there. What we know from original documentation when the purse was found is that it was not found there at all, and that it was Mermel and other officers who influenced the witness to change his testimony. Herman has sued other officers for coercing witnesses to testify falsely in support of his conviction. As for what Herman seeks in damages in the complaint, he seeks compensatory damages for his injuries, which include things that will be obvious to you: 3 decades of lost freedom, 3 decades away from time with his children. They were 6 and 3 years old at the time they were taken from him, and at the time he was put in prison for 3 decades. Herman will ultimately ask a jury what 29 years of being denied contact, letter writing, phone calls with his children due to the wrongful conduct of these defendant officers, what is that worth? He will also be seeking compensation for lost wages for the 3 decades that he was unable to earn a living, unable to develop skills, and maintain his good standing with the United States Navy. With that, I am happy to introduce to you Herman Williams, who will speak with us today.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to express my deepest love and heartfelt thanks to everyone, the Illinois and New York Innocence Projects. So many were involved with my case over the years, especially Lauren Caseberg, Vanessa Potkin, and Lynn Bagley. My love and appreciation and loyalty to all of them. I would also like to thank the civil litigation team here today that is fighting to bring me the accountability that I want and I know I deserve. I wanted the best team, and I believe I have the best team in that. This terrible tragedy didn't just affect me, what was done to me tore up my entire family. Specifically, my children, Charlie and Crystal. For their entire lives, they were without a mother and a father, being told that their father murdered their mother. Can you imagine that? Growing up in a family torn apart by what never should have been. We are working hard to repair those damaged relationships and to make up for the lost time and complicated emotions. That work will continue probably the rest of our lives. There's a mural in the Stateville prison that says honor and integrity. Well, I can tell you I did not experience much honor or integrity for those 28 years that I was incarcerated. By being an innocent person in prison, it gives you a very different view and perspective on what takes place there. Try to imagine spending half your life at the hands of the Department of Corrections, spending all but the last months in maximum security prisons, treated like the very worst, having your honor, integrity, and then taken from you, and being given a number. Living in roach, mice, and rat-infested cages, no medical or dental care, being ignored and lied to, the physical and mental mistreatment and disrespect. Impossible to explain how horrible it was for over 28 years. Then when your innocence is proven, a judge orders your release, and they don't even want to clothe you. They just shove you out without even a oops, our bad, or sorry. Just let go, just go. But even more important is how I got there in the first place. My wrongful conviction that was like a nightmare that didn't end, was tragic in this case, is that the police and prosecutors who handled this case in Lake County did not care about the truth. No, not at all. No one should be allowed to railroad an innocent person and steal their lives. And why? Where was the oversight, the checks and balances? Public servants should be held to a high standard because innocent people in this country depend on them. I know about public service from my time in the U.S. Navy. Public servants are accountable to the citizens of this country. And not only was I wrongfully convicted, but the police and prosecutors ignored real suspects and never found the person who did this horrible crime to the mother of my kids. Nor have they even reopened the case since my release. In the words of Justice Blackstone, it is better that 10 guilty men go free than to incarcerate one innocent man. Like I said, my goal here in this civil lawsuit is justice. The people who did this to me and devastated me and my kids and my family need to be held accountable for all the years I've missed dinners, birthdays, holidays, regular days, first days of school, hard days in school, the list goes on and on. I look forward to the jury hearing all the facts, the public learning the truth about what happened to me. I can never get that time back, but hope to bring some measure of balance, honor, integrity to what is fair back to my family. Thank you.
Want to see if we have any questions? No, we have everyone assembled here.
Hi, I'm Kate Codier at ABC7. If Herman would like to, I know you walked us through that, but can you talk to us about what was taken from you? What message would you like people to hear from you tonight?
Imagine 29 years in a time capsule. Walking out into a whole new world. Imagine, I don't know if you have kids or not, imagine your kids being yanked from you and you're not even allowed to have contact. You know, my family is from Arizona. I was up here in Illinois, so visits were very rare. For the longest time in Illinois, if I wanted to talk to my family while in prison, it would cost me $1 a minute to talk to them. I don't have that kind of money. My family didn't have that kind of money, so phone calls were very rare. You know, went into prison. That's my daughter, Crystal. She wasn't much older when I went to prison. Now she's a grown woman. I don't, you know, we're still learning to getting to know each other. You know, I mean, I lost my Navy career. You know, anybody that knows me knew that was my life. That was, you know, I took pride. I took honor in wearing the uniform and serving. You know,
Sir.
with military service, there's a lot of honor. There's a lot of pride that goes with it. All that was taken away from me, and I ended up a number.
And sir, I know that nothing can replace what you've lost, but what do you hope that this lawsuit will accomplish for you personally?
Bring accountability to the justice system. You know, as I had said, if you could hear me, I was kind of breaking up there. You know, public servants of all the way across the board should be held to the highest standards. They should be accountable for everything that they do and have done. And you know, bringing them to bear is not going to make up the 29 years. Making them do 29 years in prison is not going to make up what they did to me. But I do think about that. You know, just letting the truth be told. That is first and foremost.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And for the team, if someone could walk us through the next steps, what's going to happen from here, if that's okay? Anyone who would want to?
Sure, and then anybody can chime in if I miss a step here. So, the complaint has been filed. We will be in contact soon with everybody regarding service of process of that lawsuit. And then they will all have time to respond to the lawsuit, and then we'll be meeting with the court, setting a schedule.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. We'll be setting a schedule for what's called discovery, expert discovery, and then ultimately what we want is a trial date.
Have you heard any response? I know this was just filed yesterday, so I apologize for a delayed question here, which is, have you heard a response from any of the parties involved in this lawsuit?
Yeah, we don't have any formal response from anybody. It's a little quick for that, but we anticipate hearing from the parties very shortly, formal responses very shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that I might have missed in terms of logistics or anything?
Not as far as logistics, but it's important to note that Herman was not the only victim. Not the only victim of Lou Tessman and Mr. Marmel. That it has come to light that they have a pattern of abuse, a pattern of conduct that intentionally disregarded their oath as public officials. It's really heinous what happened here, but what's even worse is that Herman was not the only one. And Herman has said to us multiple times in our discussions, make sure that this is put a stop to. This can't continue. Others can't suffer like I've suffered. It's very important to him. He wants the 29 years he spent behind bars to turn into something good for somebody. And we're committed to do that.
Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you very much. And if you need anything, please feel free to email press@mark